Hello, everybody. This is Two Queers in a Truck, and I'm playing this song in honor of Miss Maddie Cawthorn and her affinity for lingerie and sexy clothes. And he was feeling pretty. But anyway, that will be one of our topics. In fact,
Oh,
it'll
good
be
golly.
topic number two. But he definitely was feeling it. I love it.
Yeah.
I'm happy for him and all of his cocaine and orgies. But anyway, this is Two Queers in a Truck, and my show partner, Christy Cano. How you doing, Christian?
Hey, Boo. It's been a long time. Sorry, I'm trying to get my background.
It's all
Yeah.
good.
Hey,
It's a little
everyone.
wobbly.
There we
It's a
go.
little Pornhub looking. But anyway,
Yeah, that's
I
right.
am Jenny Gunn, and we are the two co-hosts of the quick-witted and often very pretty show called Two Queers in a Truck, and we have got some shade to throw. Like the jokes are literally just writing themselves, and in fact, that's the first topic. MTG, of course, testified in Congress on Friday, and we literally could just do a two queer show just on MTG and just the Friday shenanigans. Like literally, she could be an entire stand up routine for shows to come. She just is the gift that keeps on giving, and unless of course you live in her Georgia district. But anyway,
Exactly.
she the probably the biggest thing that came out of all that, besides her lack of memory, was also that some of the things that she texted on January 6th to the president was talking about urging him to declare martial law, which is very interesting because the inauguration was just a couple weeks later. And, by declaring martial law, how would that affect, the transfer of power, that sort of thing, which is a really scary mindset. And of course, she's trying to distance herself from January 6th.
Yeah.
But yet there's texts that are showing up in the evidence that, because our phone records have been subpoenaed. And obviously, there's a definite disconnect between her words and her memory and what she was texting, the day of and the following days, trying to get the president to shut everything down. What an authoritarian, disjointed mess. I don't know what your thoughts are when you saw that or what you processed, but
I think Barbara said it best when was it last year? We were talking about 2021. I think it was the last show when we said the adios 2021. Barbara said it best that I don't think we Americans realized how bad things were under Trump. We knew what the crazy stuff he did and all of the stuff. We knew that, but we didn't know how authoritarian he wanted to be, how delusional he was, and how all of this stuff about January 6th. I think because the Republicans, obviously, they don't want us to talk about it because I think it was really bad. And they're like, it's nothing. Don't look at it. Don't look. Look over here.
Look at the birdie. Look at the birdie.
Transgender kids, look over here. Don't look. Don't look at the wreck. Keep going. And I do think that the hearings, because we're going to have the January 6th hearings, I think, in August or something. I think Americans are going to be like, oh my God, this was crazy. And I don't know how it's going to come from that, but I do think that, I don't know, that's kind of.
I think that it was such a massive attack on the Capitol, and there were so many players and both office holders, regular citizens, and it was so surreal, and it was so, I guess the last time that we had something like that inside our country probably was the Civil War, and that was like 1860s, so it's been a minute since we've really been faced with something where there was an out and out attack on democracy, where it was intended to be an attack on democracy. Sure. They had their little T-shirts that were even made up that said "Stop the Steal," and they were doing YouTube videos and the TikToks and saying, "Yeah, we're all flying and driving," and said it And I think our country didn't believe it. Like we knew about the gathering, and they were talking about it in the press for a couple of weeks, but also too, on the other side of the coin, the FBI warned the local police and said, better reinforce the Capitol, you know, because it's not that far from where they're gathering, just to be on the safe side. And obviously the Capitol Police did not take that seriously, which I don't know why you wouldn't take the FBI seriously, but that's a big joke. But I think two things. I think we got so used to being gaslit by Trump, and because he's so over the top with his language, but he doesn't really do anything. He didn't really do anything as a president. And truthfully, he was a really lame duck president, even when the Republicans controlled both chambers. He just worked, you know, a few hours a day, 4 days a week, and then his golf trips every weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Honestly, his verbiage hurt unity in this country, and he was very divisive language-wise, but policy-wise, he was an absolute failure. And I think that's what took people by surprise when the attack on the Capitol happened because of him. And I think people were like, well, that's, for better or worse, it's the most effective thing he's ever done. It's not a good thing, but it was an effective thing. He rallied them all up and got them all slobbered up, and then said, let the dogs loose, and they attacked the Capitol. And I think because it was, you know, it's kind of like a Pearl Harbor type event. You know, it's a shot heard around the world type event. It's something that was so sudden, or a 9/11, you know, to use a current, you know, I think it was so quick and so sudden that people took them a while to catch their breath, and then they were outraged because they're like, good God, he attacked the Capitol building, you know, and I think there's still a lot of outrage, but with any investigation into the magnitude of this, because there's over 700 of those people sitting in jail right now, it's A, going to take a while, and Americans aren't known for their patience, and B, it's a lot. They've got 3 million pieces of photos and videos alone, and so it's just a big thing, and it's gonna take a while to unfold, way past this year. But the next subject is directly tied to the "I Feel Pretty" song. Lady Maddie Cawthorn was right about cocaine and orgies, but she did leave out the part where she likes to feel pretty and crosswise. So pictures have surfaced of her legitimately partying with it looks like two young women. Yeah. And she is glammed up, got the glam makeup on, got a little nice negligee. It's a very good complementary color, looking smoking hot. So clearly Cawthorn was right about the orgies and the cocaine, but obviously had a couple rails in them, and then decided to look pretty and feel pretty and gay.
So it wasn't just that the picture was of him dressed like that. What was more important, anyone who knows, it was how he was posing spoke a lot too. He was posing like with his hands, like he was twisting his nipple, and one of them like this, you know. And it was, and there's nothing wrong with any of that. It's just that you say it all the time, and we all know, whenever someone is talking about something, it's usually because they're hiding something. Yeah. And no person that showed a little bit of freakiness. And he's a young guy. He can be crazy.
So I've got a question for you.
Sure, go ahead.
So it wasn't that far removed, like a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, when Miss Maddie made the comment about the cocaine
orgies,
orgies in Washington D.C. held by the Republicans.
Yeah.
Do you think Miss Maddie was using that as a distraction technique because they knew these pictures were about to hit the Twitter land and the Instagram? Like, do you think it was a first punch before? Most likely this was leaked by a Republican. There's a good chance.
It had to have been.
The timing's not
especially
off.
North Carolina, because they're trying to unseat him. The establishment in North Carolina, they're trying to unseat him because of how much what he's done. But I guess I don't know. I think he's only 26 years old. So we have to remember he's still a kid in comparison to people's maturity and all. And there's a lot of very mature 25, 26-year-olds, but he's 26 years old. Prior to his accident, he was a wild young guy. And I think what we all know, because you and I both grew up in Texas, we know the Southern Baptist kind of guys who go out partying, drinking, smoking weed, doing all kinds of stuff Friday and Saturday and Sunday, they're at church. Those are the wildest people are the Southern Baptist kids. He's exactly like that he is like this wild, he was probably this really wild person, and then suddenly he's trying to act like he's,
apparently he's not too far removed from that,
No, he's not.
Between driving on a suspended license as a sitting congressman and cross-dressing and partying and looking pretty, when his political party clearly is anti-LGBT, especially genderqueer. It's just the irony of ironies. And I can't help but think, speaking of his age, but he's old enough to be in Congress. And so I get that if he was a Taco Bell employee and this blew up on the internet or something like that. But to me, if you have a job that you've been trusted by your district to be voted in, you should be able to act as if you should rise up to your station in life. And he's doing a huge disservice acting the way he does and saying all the inane things, driving on a suspended license because of DWIs, the whole 9 yards. This dude's still living like he's 20 years old and going to school, but he's got a grown-up job.
So Jenny, you hit the nail right on the head. And this is one of the things that you and I have been talking about. There are how many million people in America? I can't remember.
330 million.
330 million people. Let's say 200 million of them are able to vote. Let's just guesstimate. I don't know my numbers.
That's not too bad.
Out of 200 million Americans, there are only 435 jobs in the House of Representatives. So what they're telling me, the Republican Party is telling me, of the 435 jobs, this is the best person you have to apply for that one job for that district.
Yeah.
That's embarrassing. Marjorie Taylor Greene is the best person you have to apply for the congressional 14th district. That's shameful and embarrassing. If I were a Republican, I know on the show earlier, you and I were talking about the ones in Charlotte, North Carolina. You would think that one of them would say, in the real world, we wouldn't even consider them to hire them.
No.
And so that is one of the things I think to your point where you're talking about when this picture, it's not the fact that this picture is being released. What's important is you have to understand is whatever you think about the picture, whatever you think about what he says, this is a very serious job. And then you're saying this is the best person of all. I don't know what your standards are, but I want a better person to represent me and my district. So
just somebody else, for that district's sake.
Yeah.
That was the alarm. So we're going to take a quick break and we're going to go to section number 3.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching us on Two Queers in a Truck. Don't forget, you can watch us anytime at your leisure on our video podcast platforms like Facebook and YouTube, but you can also listen to us, either this show or any of our past shows, on our audio podcast platforms like Apple, Amazon, Google, Spotify, and all of the other ones. So once again, thank you for watching Two Queers in a Truck. I hope you enjoy our show.
And we are back. And I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
I completely, for the fact
you agree with me? Oh,
this whole sedition caucus that they currently have of the 6 or 7 clowns in the House of Representatives. If I was in charge of the Republican Party and I was the empress or the queen of that party, and we all know that party's full of a lot of queens, I'd be cleaning house. And
Yeah.
I would be having some sit-tos and going, I just don't need y'all to run again. You know, like, and we're going to primary the hell out of you. We're going to dump money behind another candidate. You're gone. You're fired. Like I had that conversation over the weekend with some Republicans. I said, if there's one thing y'all can take from me is if you guys want to exist for another 10 years, y'all going to have to clean house.
Yeah.
You're going to have to clean house. So number 3 is Death DeSantis hates Mickey. So over the course of last week, of course, the last couple of weeks, Disney stood up to the Don't Say Gay bill that's been in the news for off and on for about a month or so, and made a public statement. They typically do not make public statements on Florida politics, but they broke ranks because they are the largest single private employer in the state of Florida with 88,000 strong employees. The second thing is Disney's always had a hiring policy and an open and an affirming policy of hiring LGBT people in their organization, whether it's the California park, their studios, or whatever. They've never had an anti-LGBT hiring policy. And they were one of the first ones to do that. And so they're at the urging of the employees and a lot of pressure from inside the organization, the Disney CEO made a public and damning statement about the Don't Say Gay bill and gave out the reasons why. Of course, the Republican Party, the current Republican Party, especially with Death DeSantis down there in Florida, acted like they normally do, like a petulant child, and came up with the idea that they were going to end Disney's special tax status on Disney's internal social services like police, fire, water company. That basically Disney was its own municipality, collected its own taxes, and basically the visitor to the Disney parks and the Disney facilities paid for all the internal deals, so that the county and the city, surrounding cities, did not have to. And they were basically self-governing. So it was taking a burden off the local government. Well, and DeSantis' infinite wisdom targeted that law, reversed it out, and it will go into effect next year, basically putting all the logistics, all the burden, all the costs on the local areas. Not only will it be a taxing nightmare, but you're going to put the facilities that's almost 30,000 acres, the size of a pretty good sized city, with internal tunnels and subways, and just it's a if you've never been to Disney World, you don't realize how big Disney is. It is its own city. It's the size of a lot of big cities acreage wise. So like I said, it's almost 30,000 developed acres. Back on to the local authorities after 50 plus years of autonomy. And so the only person that really, or group of people that are really going to hurt is the locals. It's not going to screw Disney. The services will still have to be done.
Exactly.
And it's going to be like, there's so many questions. There's not any really answers, but what a child, I can only say it as a childish, spoiled brat deal where they just need to send DeSantis back to his room and just don't let him out. I mean, like, they need to get him.
This is worse than North Carolina's HB2.
Oh,
and it's going to blow up worse than North Carolina's HB2. Because basically what you're saying is, to your point, Disney, from a PR standpoint, I guess, you took it away from them. Yeah, you won. We took this away from you. But to your point, Jenny, Disney doesn't even pay for that. The people who go into the park pay for those taxes. Okay. So now maybe the tickets can be lowered, and now Florida, you're going to have to pay for it. So now Florida is going to have to subsidize Disney because they're going to have to pay for all of these, as you mentioned.
And because Disney World has always been set up this way, when it opened up, it was already this way. They created a special district to bring Disney there and to make it easier for, at that time, Orlando and the surrounding area were very small towns. Like there was nothing really there before Disney. That's why Disney bought all that land. Yeah. And so it was a way of because they knew how much acreage they bought. They knew what the future plans were, that they were all planned out for 50, 60 years in advance. Yeah. And they knew how massive this was going to be. And so it was very wise of both Disney Corp and the Florida politicians at the time to make sure that they made it make sense. And to end it just because you had a fit, for one, what they were saying to corporations, including Disney, you can't use your First Amendment rights. Yeah. From a political party that talks about censorship and taking Donald Trump off Twitter, even though he
and cancel culture
services and cancel culture, they literally passed a law to try to cancel Disney.
Exactly.
And what's going to happen? One, they're going to be able to sue, because corporations also are persons; they're non-living persons. So and so they have the same protections under the Constitution and under the law, which means there is going to be a federal lawsuit on a First Amendment violation trying to silence Disney. And I guarantee you they will win. They will win in court, hands down. Or I never want to hear anything about the First or Second Amendment from Republicans again. I never want to hear it again. I will flip my shit the first time they say that. I'm like, no. You had your chance. Well, you violated the First Amendment. Your own sitting governor in Florida. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye, boo-boo. But we are on the next subject. Okay. I'm going to need that money back, Frenchie. Putin's candidate that he's been supporting this candidate, Le Pen, for multiple elections. Lost. Macron won 58% of the vote over the weekend. Yeah. To go on to, even though he had the lowest approval ratings in his term, but I'll get to why. But he won by an astounding 58%. Nobody predicted that he was going to win that much of the vote. They figured he was going to win, but they thought it was going to be a lot closer on the runoff because France has multiple good-sized political parties there, and so nobody got the majority of the vote in the first election. Of course, they scheduled the runoff a week or two later, and Macron won 58% of the vote. But what people don't understand is that, well, that was lower than the last time. Typically, in French national politics, especially for their president, it's really, in fact, I don't think it's happened in 50 years that a president won 2 terms back to back. Yeah, it's been a while. The French voter is very fickle. They're very opinionated, especially in the major metropolitan areas. They typically do not keep the same person in office because they just don't want anybody in there for a long time. They're very anti-dictator. I mean, we think about the French Revolution and let them eat cake. I mean, they do have that history of chopping off people's heads. And so they just don't like authority that much. They don't even really like the United States that much. There's been many times we've tried to fly over their airspace to, hit Libya or something. I said, no, you got to fly around because we don't want you doing that. And so they've been always very outspoken, very, very deal. And, but they don't want an authoritarian president. And so it was more of an anti-Le Pen versus a pro-Macron vote, but they don't want a French version of Putin. And publicly has said they're very supportive of President Putin in Russia. So there's a lot of memes going around where it's got the split screen of Putin in a pose that looks like a mafia boss, and Le Pen kind of going like she's scared, just in case for people listening on audio. And it says basically, I need that money back. I get it. That's funny. You got like 7 days to pay me back and stuff like that.
But you know what, Jenny? That was the big news, because France obviously is a very, very important, big country, European country. Mm-hmm. But there also was another victory. I think it was in Slovenia. The far right, or the right wing Trumpish kind of person, lost there also. Mm-hmm. And so I think that really speaks to, because remember, when Trump was elected, there was this wave of Trump-ish kind of people that were winning in these countries. And now it looks like that wave is kind of going the other way. Part of it may be because of Putin's invasion of Ukraine.
And I know with the Al Jazeera article I read, there was a lot of dynamics. One, Macron did a very good job of managing France during the COVID pandemic. And a lot of French citizens, a lot of French corporations, and a lot of French other politicians in all intersections, all different parties, said Macron did a really good job. He was a very competent leader. And so I think some of it was, they're like, he deserves it. Just like here with Biden, they said, one of the biggest things that crushed the Trump re-election campaign was obviously the mismanaged and gross negligence of their COVID policies that were just atrocious and probably led to the untimely deaths of hundreds of thousands and maybe even millions of Americans. And in the same way with Brazil and Bolsonaro, he's extraordinary. He's the most unpopular that he's ever been in his career. And so you're seeing this pushback from these, ridiculous candidates that were heavy-handed in COVID. They've been heavy-handed in their deal. And then you're right. The Ukrainian invasion and the atrocities that are happening right now, they're like, oh, no, we saw what Trump did. Yeah. We saw what Putin did. We don't want that here. And for democracies, especially Western Europe democracies or European democracies in general, they're like, oh, no. This is our wake-up call. And you're seeing more support for NATO. You're seeing Finland wanting to join NATO. You're seeing more support, more galvanized support for the European Union, and France is one of the two big high-wealth nations that really control the European Union because Great Britain left. Yeah. And this was a very important election, both in Slovenia and in France, on reaffirming free and fair elections and pushing back against authoritarianism in Europe and abroad.
But don't you think, Jenny, here in the United States, with the midterms coming up, and of course there's so much time between now and then, don't you think that all of this last Sunday when I went to the event that you were at, there was a person that arrived who ran for office, was a Democrat, and we were talking, and the person said some kind of not really negative things, but some concerns about the Democratic Party and about Biden and all that kind of stuff. And I, because my response is not always very quickly, I really believe the midterms is going to be more about, I don't care what you think about Biden and the Democrats, they will never be as bad as the Republicans.
Correct.
And I think that we just somehow, that has to be the message, that we have to say, you know what, maybe you're upset about inflation, maybe you're upset about Brexit, but let's put things in perspective. Right. At least we don't have a dick as a president, and at least, do you want Marjorie Taylor Greene as your representative? I think somehow when we get that message across the summer, I think I hope that people will.
I think there's going to be some interesting things. Yeah. No, I will say we do have to do our next break, and then when we come back, we'll talk about that a little bit more. And we are back.
Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for watching us on Two Queers in a Truck. Don't forget, you can watch us anytime at your leisure on our video podcast platforms like Facebook and YouTube. But you can also listen to us, either this show or any of our past shows, on our audio podcast platforms like Apple, Amazon, Google, Spotify, and all of the other ones. So once again, thank you for watching Two Queers in a Truck. I hope you enjoy our show.
I do believe there's going to be a lot of pushback against Republican failures. I think the January 6th is going to come to a crescendo. In the fall, we're going to see a lot of fallout. We're going to see a lot of people that were in office or just got out of office. They're going to be under the microscope in August, which is perfect timing because we were talking about 60 days from the
Sure.
midterm. I think it's going to be a very interesting time, and I think the Republicans should be scared. The next topic is the NRA wants to wipe out our kids, and a national pediatric group put out their reasons or the causes of death. And
I know what you're talking about.
Once again, the number one cause of death for people under 18 for minors is guns. And so not cancer, not COVID, not anything else, not even childhood communicable diseases, but guns, because we've let this gun thing get so out of control, and we've allowed the NRA, a private organization, to dictate national government terms and safety rules. And I'm going to say this, I'm going to say this again and again, there is no other product or industry that should be able to self-manage and police their own. And without any corporate responsibility and being held accountable for their products and their product liability, because we all know in the early days of the auto industry, they used to be self-policing before they formed the National Highway Transportation thing and started hiding higher safety standards like seat belts and airbags and that sort of thing. And that's why there was so much death on the roads, and deaths and auto accidents are at a historic low because of regulation and responsibility. The NRA and guns in general have to have those same standards. And that's what the well-regulated militia clause in the Second Amendment is talking about, is well-regulating arms and firearms in the country. And without a healthy boundary set, that's why we're seeing kids killed by firearms as their number one cause of death out of the tens of millions of kids that live in this country. And that's a preventable thing. It's not like cancer, it's not like cancer. It just acts. The gun industry is a cancer on the United States, but it doesn't have to be that way. At some point, we got to be responsible.
I saw that report. I think it came out this weekend or whatever it was, and I was, of course, I was shocked. But then at the same time, it seems like we are in a time in America where there's so many issues that people are like, that's terrible, but it's just the way it is. At least with our generation. Our generation.
And do you think that we've allowed the conservatives to dictate the public opinion on the gun industry too long? I think we've allowed this false narrative. Like some of the people that responded to that Twitter post was like, that's why we don't get invaded. And, I'm like,
that kind of baloney. Yeah, exactly.
Which is not true. It could be our 6,700 nuclear weapons. And the fact that we're the largest Air Force and Navy on the planet. I don't know. That could be it too. And we have satellites, so we could actually see large militaries coming over on ships and planes coming over, like China would be able to hide 1 million soldiers.
Exactly.
Over, like it's not like the Pearl Harbor days where we had no satellite technology. We had no way of seeing them. And all we had to do was have dudes on binoculars up in towers and like, oh, there's planes like Fantasy Island. Well, by then it's too late. You already got, 500 Zero fighters coming over bombing Pearl Harbor. Now we can see them when they're lifting off from their runways, And so just that ridiculous, tired argument. And then the other one that, we should be able to have any kind of weapon we want. I'm going, well, then where does that stop? Should we allow citizens to have, Scud missiles and nuclear weapons? So, what's the difference between a handgun and a nuclear weapon? We should all have nukes. Let's have our own private nuke arsenal, where does it stop? Where does it stop before it becomes ridiculous?
Good point.
And we had a co-host that absolutely believed in the Wild West, no regulations on guns thing. and we did a show on it, and it just doesn't make sense. Like, that's why we're here right now at this intersection as the number one cause of death for children, for kids.
Yeah.
We always hear about the pro-life argument.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know what? I think with the boomers and Gen Xers, with our generation, this issue is not going to be fixed. I think it's up to the millennials to fix this issue, and they seem, as of right now, they seem to be trending more towards gun safety, gun protections, all this kind of stuff. And so I'm hoping that they are not going to be with us, with our generation. Many of them, their minds are set. They're the ones that are doing this baloney. We need it to
whatever
militia. Yeah, it's
ridiculous. It's just
exactly.
They sound like children, spoiled children.
Exactly.
And I think along the Texas abortion, turn in your neighbor hotline thing.
Yeah.
California, of course, did it, but I think all democratically controlled states need to start setting up to sue manufacturers and gun brokers and sue them out of business, sue them out of Bolivia and put them in jail, and start holding gun owners, gun brokers, and gun manufacturers completely accountable for this problem. And we just saw a landmark lawsuit awarding, the families of Sandy Hook just recently a record amount of money, and it looks like it's going to hold up. And we need to see more of that. And then hit them where it hurts, the pocketbook, and then it takes all the fun out of it. Maybe we'll run some of these companies out of business since they are merchants of death with no conscience. The last topic is vote early, vote often. It's the Republican way. Mark Meadows over the weekend or the last few days, I mean, not that he didn't have enough, interference and chicanery and all that. Comes to find out, he's actually registered to vote in 3 different states. The party of voter fraud, as in they actually do the voter fraud, as one of their chief, chicken littles that screams about stolen elections and all that. Dude's registered in 3 states. Registered to vote in 3 different states.
What did we say? If a Republican yells about something, it's usually because they're doing it.
Right. And they're feeling pretty while they're doing it. It was some cocaine, some orgies, It's just surreal. It's just
he's this is more serious than I think, and I think we all know it's more serious because especially because this all started with the North Carolina thing where his wife they were registered at this mountain cabin place that he had never visited, but she visited once with the kids, and they registered to vote there, and they voted there, but yet they didn't actually live there, which is against North Carolina law. You have to be there at least 30 days and so forth. And they were also registered in Virginia at this, or South Carolina or something. I don't know, one of those.
South Carolina.
So it is actually a felony to do that. And as a result of that, this is going to be more serious because the North Carolina Board of Elections is actually investigating this because the district attorney for that county Mark Meadows donated to her campaign. So she excluded herself and passed this on to the North Carolina State Police or whatever they're called. And they're investigating it. And then they get the Board of Elections. They're run by Democrats. I'm not saying that they're going to be biased, but I'm saying is that no one's going to tell them, don't look at this.
Right.
Because our attorney general is Democrat, our governor's Democrat. They're going to say, do your job. I'm not going to interfere with this. And so I think he's going to be indicted somehow.
Well, and we had the District 9, Republican voter fraud and that too.
And actually that guy died
a few years ago. Yeah, that guy just kicked the bucket.
He did.
We're
McCree Dallas, I think, or Dallas McCree or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot his name. Yeah.
Yeah, he had the specialized home pickup
That's right. Yep.
Just helping that sheep over the fence, more or less. Going to see the donkey show, and and literally, how can and Republicans, in all seriousness, where do you go from there? Where whatever shred of dignity, which obviously they don't have any. It's a rhetorical question, but literally, how do you scream stop the steal, voter fraud, all these problems, when every time that voter fraud is looked into, it tends to be a Republican?
Hey, Jen, I have a question for you. And you don't have to answer this because I know you have friends that are Republicans locally, or at least in Charlotte. So do you think, since this is two queers in a truck, do you think that the gay people that we may know that are Republican, do you think they are because they like being a big fish and a kind of a, they like the attention, the people, it's almost like being a black Republican.
Right.
You get a lot of attention. Attention.
Don't have a lot of competition.
Yeah, yes. And in many ways, it used to be not necessarily as much anymore. If you're like a Latinx Republican, you used to get a lot of attention. Not anymore because they're kind of white anyway,
Lady
exactly. I mean, no one thinks of Ted Cruz as a Tejano. They think of Ted Cruz as a white guy.
Well, he's not really. He's Cuban.
Cuban American.
He's a Cuban American,
exactly,
kind of Canadian-ish.
Canadian-ish, exactly.
With Raphael / Ted Cruz.
Yeah.
And I think a couple of things. I know where you're going with this.
Sure.
I think when you're talking about local Republicans, especially local out of the closet Republicans running for local offices, I think it's a couple of things in play. I think one, they grew up in a conservative bubble, and they came from very conservative families, and aligned themselves with the Republican Party for whatever reason because of more of a family thing. And I think the upside is if you're a gay Republican running in Mecklenburg County for any office, you are going to stand out. You are going to get an edge that may make you successful. The downside is that 80% of the registered voters in Mecklenburg County are Democrat.
Exactly.
So you're going to have, that's a big step for a stepper. You're going to have to capture, you're going to have to get a lot of Republicans to come out for a local, election cycle. Not so much in the primary because, like at large,
there's not really a primary for them.
There's not really a primary for them because they don't have more than the allowable slots. But this fall, or no, actually in July for the local,
that's right, July. Yeah, that's right.
So they're going to have to go up against a party that has a 80% advantage overall. So they're going to have to count on two things: a super low Democrat turnout. And a huge bump, a political bump. Now, I think the big problem is Republican voters per se aren't going to get out in droves saying, I really loved y'all passed that NDO last year and supported natural hair and queers. So I don't know.
That was kind of what I'm saying is that they're in order for them to even have a chance, they have to get all of their base plus steal some from everyone else, from the independents and the Democrats, right?
And I don't think since it's a local election it's the main one's going to be in July when they go up against the Democrats. You're talking about 4th of July. You're talking about a party month. You're talking about a lot of people being out of town. Even the city council's off that month. All the governing boards are off that month. It's their hiatus month. I just think people are, and it's the first year that really feels like we're starting to get out of COVID. I think it's going to be a miserably low turnout.
It's going to be very, very low turnout.
Like, I think it'll be
I guess,
lower than May
yeah.
17th primary because kids are still in school, people are still home,
Sure,
and all that. And I think the midterms for the federal and state that's in November, I think is going to have a pretty good bump. I think there's so much at stake in November. But I think of the 3 elections going on this year, I do believe our July local is going to be a disaster for the Republican candidates. Honestly, don't think they have a chance now of winning. But
neither do I.
And I don't think the Republican nationals are helping them at all. Like I think.
Well, first of all, you have to run on a platform that we need change. And quite honestly, Charlotte and Mecklenburg County is thriving. It is prosperous, just like the United States. We're thriving. We're doing very, very well. Yes, there is inflation, but everyone, they're very low unemployment. A lot of things are doing very well. So you basically have to say is, I don't like success.
Well, in typical of American, no matter where we're at, 2 things in play. I think a lot of the people that are going to vote in the local election are going to be predominantly Black voters and white voters.
Sure. Yep.
They tend to lean more Democrat, especially in this county. I think too, because economically, Charlotte's been super successful. I mean, it's had a powerful decade. This last 10 years has just been uber successful for Charlotte. So it's really hard to stir up what's about the economy, Stephen. They're like, well, it's one of the fastest growing cities in the United States.
And the response has to be, yes, it is.
The city's literally like you look around. There isn't a major road or section of town, especially in the center city. And I'm going to say one more thing about this that doesn't have a major construction project going on, or a massive road expansion going on. And the parts of town that are seeing the highest level of economic success and gentrification also typically is where you see the highest turnout, especially in local elections. And because those people tend to work, they don't have to work second jobs. They tend to vote at very high levels. And the more economically successful voters typically vote at higher levels than impoverished voters. And it being a May election with no president and a July election with no president on the ballot, I think the Republicans are in a lot of trouble locally.
We'll see.
And so we'll just see. We will have to see. And so that we are out of time. In fact, we've gone slightly over.
Oh, my goodness.
So we are going to close out with a little bit more Julie Andrews, and I Feel Pretty.
Babu.
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 Hey, y'all, thanks for watching, and we had to have a little fun with Madison Cawthorn and him feeling pretty and gay. Y'all have a great week. We'll see you in May.
Bye, boo-boo.
Bye, boo-boo.